Mr. Bolton, earlier this year, I introduced, along with various other senators on both sides of the aisle, some legislation I mentioned in our first panel, the Bipartisan National Economic Security Strategy Act of 2018, S 2757. It will create a statutory requirement for not just this administration, but for future administrations to periodically produce and submit to Congress a national economic security strategy, just as we do a national security strategy. A very sensitive topic, but there's an unclassified version with a classified annex. Members of Congress respectfully engage back and forth, kick the tires of the strategy, and then we sort of move forward together as a country. I just ask you, sir, are you aware of the legislation I just referenced? And if so, what are your initial or general impressions of it?
Senator Young, we are now aware of your legislation. We're taking a look at it, so I don't have an official business roundtable position for you. But I'll give a personal view now. It's a good idea. I served in administrations where the exercise that the National Security Council goes through on a regular basis to produce a national security strategy is hugely beneficial, both to forming priorities within the administration and then holding yourselves accountable for how are you doing against your priorities. And I'm inclined to agree with you that doing the same on the economic front would be enormously beneficial, not just for the Trump administration, but any administration.
And Mr. Fuchs, you just earlier indicated that the strategy is an effective component of making sure that we respond optimally to China in particular, their predatory economic practices. My words, not yours, but I'm going to allow you to explain to me and others why you believe a strategy is needed, sir.
Well, thank you, Senator. I am aware of your legislation and am closely reviewing it as well. But to your question, I absolutely believe that this country needs a coherent and comprehensive strategy that sees the trade aspects in the broader picture of how best we can grow the economy here at home in a way that works for all Americans and that protects our international interests and our national security at the same time. So I absolutely believe that a strategy in this regard is necessary, and I'm encouraged, frankly, by some of the efforts that I've seen in Congress for Congress to push the administration to develop such a strategy, especially in this case.
Thank you much. I would note that there's a real distinction that needs to be made between objectives on one hand and a more rigorous, more thorough and comprehensive strategy developed across different departments of government, working with, say, the National Economic Council and National Security Council. Some bullet points on a PowerPoint slide with 5 pillars, frankly, is not a strategy. And you know that. To the extent I have any, there's a lot of energy behind that comment. It's just conviction. Thank you for your remarks about the importance of a strategy. So Indiana is not only a major producer of ag products, as it's generally perceived to be, we're also the most manufacturing-intensive state in the country and home to major automobile producers. Companies like Toyota and Subaru and Nissan. They employ tens of thousands of Hoosiers. These companies operate by making sure that their global supply chains go uninterrupted. And Mr. Bolton, in your prepared testimony, you say the administration is now investigating whether to employ the same national security argument to restrict imports of automobiles and auto parts under Section 232. Sir, can you describe in more detail what you think would be the consequences of this approach for companies producing automobiles in Indiana and beyond, and for American consumers?
In a word, disastrous. The steel and aluminum tariffs are already having a really detrimental effect on a lot of downstream users of steel and aluminum that'll ripple throughout the economy. Now take that and multiply by 10, because the automobile trade in this country is much larger. It's in, we import close to $400 billion per year in autos and auto parts. Now, if those supply chains are disrupted, who knows how long it takes to reestablish them. There probably aren't ways for the companies to get the products they need to put into their autos. It just makes the entire industry less competitive, putting aside even the fact that of a dramatic price increase, a tax on the American people, and the people who will end up paying that tax are the people who can least afford to do it. So one of the reasons why we're here testifying so strongly, Mr. Chairman, is not just because of the effect that the use of 232 has had on steel and aluminum tariffs, but the threat to broaden it to products like autos and auto parts would really be devastating to this economy.
Thank you, gentlemen.